Hey there, and welcome to Family Revenge. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay with us for every twist and turn. Let's jump right in. The snow was coming down harder as I pulled up to the storefront. The big candy cane lights were blinking in the windows like nothing had changed in 15 years. But it had. Everything had. My name's Rachel Dunley. I'm 36. I live in Omaha now, but I grew up here in Cedar Bend, Iowa, inside that little general store, pretty much. I swore I'd never come back. But when I got that call from Mrs. Trammell, our old neighbor, something twisted in my gut. She didn't say much, just that something was off with Aunt Edie. I tried brushing it off. Then I found myself on Highway 1, windshield wipers screaming, heart thumping louder than the radio. Quick note, before we start, how's your day going, and where are you joining from? I parked by the side entrance, same spot Mom always used. The holiday music was loud inside, leaking through the walls like heat should have been. I could already hear the chatter and laughter, that sing-song tone people use when they're performing for each other. I pushed open the front door, and the smell of hot cider hit me like a memory I didn't ask for. The store was packed. Fake snowflakes dangled from fishing line. A folding table held crockpots of cider and trays of sugar cookies. Kids were lined up by the register, tossing candy canes into a giant Santa basket. And at the center of it, smiling like she owned the damn place, was Denise, my cousin, wearing one of Aunt Edie's old Christmas vests and a red apron that said Cedar Bend's Best. Kyle was there too, by the back shelf, chatting up the mayor like he gave a damn about town politics. I scanned the room, no Edie. I pushed through the crowd, caught Denise's eye, and said, "Where's Aunt Edie?" "She's resting in the back," Denise said, voice light, like this was a normal night. But something about how she said it felt wrong. Not just the words, the pause, the too sweet smile. Her hand stayed frozen in midair, like she didn't expect me to ask. I didn't wait. I cut through the storeroom like I still worked there, past the bins of bulk peanuts and dusty mop buckets. The door to the back office was bolted shut. That thing was never locked, not when I was a kid. I leaned in, pressing my ear to the wood. Faint crying, not sobbing. Just soft, broken breathing like someone was trying not to make a sound. I ran back out, grabbed the crowbar from my truck bed, and came storming back in. 2 hits, and the latch broke. There she was, Aunt Edie, curled up on the cold linoleum floor, wrapped in one of Mom's old blankets. Her skin was pale, her hands were shaking. I didn't think. I dropped the crowbar, knelt, and lifted her into my arms. She weighed half what I remembered. I carried her right through the store, past the cider table, past Denise's frozen smile, set her down in the big wooden chair behind the counter. The music cut. I pulled out my old store key, still on Mom's chain, and held it up high. "This ends tonight." Nobody said a word. The whole damn store just froze. Edie sat slumped in the chair, eyes fluttering like she was barely awake. I crouched next to her and wrapped my coat around her shoulders. Her skin felt like ice. Her hands gripped the blanket like she was afraid someone would rip it away. Denise finally stepped forward. She just needed a quiet place to rest. She prefers the quiet. I stood up. "The quiet? You locked her in a back office with no heat. You call that quiet?" Denise didn't flinch. Her voice stayed syrupy sweet. "You're being dramatic, Rachel. This is a holiday event. Maybe tone it down." I didn't tone anything down. I reached for Edie's arm and pulled up the blanket just enough to show the bruises, dark spots on her wrists and forearms, some old, some fresh. The room gasped. "She fell," Denise said, quick and sharp. I turned to Kyle. "That heater's busted. It's below 30 out there. You telling me you didn't notice?" Kyle shrugged, like we were talking about missing napkins. "It's just temporary. We've been busy. Meant to get to it." "You meant to get to it?" I stepped toward him. "You don't lock someone in a freezing room and forget." "That's not an accident," people started whispering. The music had stopped, but now even the fake cheer was gone. All you could hear was boots shifting on the old wooden floor and someone's kid asking if Santa was still coming. That's when I heard his voice. Uncle Len. Hadn't heard him speak in over 10 years. "Rachel." His voice cut through the room like a blade. "You don't live here anymore?" "This isn't your business." I turned slowly. "You think just because I moved, I stopped being family?" He stepped forward, eyes flat and hard. "You walked away. That's what you do. You stir up trouble, then you disappear. Don't act like you care now." I clenched my jaw. Being family doesn't mean staying silent when people get hurt. It means standing up when it's hard. He opened his mouth again, then shut it. Couldn't argue that and didn't want to admit it. The crowd started thinning out. The gossip would start before the front door even shut behind them. Good. Let them talk. I turned back to Edie, her head lolled against the chair, but her fingers had stopped shaking. I eased her coat on, pulled a throw blanket from the gift table, and wrapped it around her legs. Someone offered me a mug of cider. I didn't take it. Denise hovered by the register, arms crossed, watching everything with that frozen smile still stuck on her face. Kyle had vanished. Uncle Len walked out without another word. When the last of the crowd filtered out, I sat on the floor beside Edie and leaned my back against the counter. We didn't talk. I just listened to her breathe. She finally looked at me, her eyes clearer than they'd been in years. "You came," she whispered. I reached over and tucked the blanket tighter around her. "Yeah, I came," she nodded, leaned her head back, and let out a long breath. Her shoulders dropped. For the first time all night, she looked like she wasn't trying to survive. That's when I knew. They hadn't just pushed her to the side, they'd buried her right under everyone's nose and called it love. I got up, locked the front door, and flipped the sign to closed. Then I grabbed another blanket and wrapped it around her from behind, like Mom used to do when we were kids and the wind howled through the windows. We sat there in silence while the last of the fake snow decorations spun lazily from the ceiling hooks. I wasn't leaving this time. I woke up on the cot in the break room with my neck stiff and my jeans still on. The old coffee maker sputtered louder than I remembered, like it was cussing me out for waking it. Edie was still in the recliner by the front window, bundled in every blanket I could find. I didn't say anything, just started mixing pancake batter like it was any other morning. The same green bowl, the same dented spatula, the same smell of burnt edges from a griddle that never sat flat. The back door rattled in its frame as the wind picked up. I flipped a pancake and poured 2 mugs of coffee. Black, just like Edie always drank it. She stirred when the smell hit her. Slowly sat up, blanket sliding off her shoulder. Her hair stuck out on one side, and her slippers didn't match. Still, she smiled like I'd never left. "You always made 'em too thick," she said, voice scratchy but steady. "Better than too dry." I handed her a plate. We ate in the silence only blood can share. She finally looked down at the Formica table and said, "I haven't touched the store money in months." I paused. "What do you mean?" "They took over." Said it was just to help. Only while I rested. "Denise and Kyle?" She nodded. Started small. 1 shift, then a full week. Then the safe got a new combo I didn't pick. Next thing I knew, Kyle's name was on the bank forms. I stared at her, the words catching. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Her hands tightened around the mug. "They said I was getting confused, that I shouldn't be dealing with customers anymore." "They told you that?" She looked at me, eyes shining, mouth trembling just enough to show she was still fighting not to cry. "They said I'd embarrass myself." I didn't answer right away. My jaw locked so tight I could hear the bones shift. I stood and grabbed another pancake off the plate just to move. "That's not confusion. That's control. They said it was better this way. That I could just sit up front and greet folks. If I felt up to it, I poured more coffee for both of us. So they shoved you into a corner and gave you scraps. They're family. Doesn't mean they're not selfish." She didn't argue, just kept chewing, slow and quiet, like every bite was a decision. I leaned against the counter and crossed my arms. "You raised them better than this." Her fork clinked against the plate. "Apparently not." We didn't say much after that, but I watched her. The way her fingers curled tighter around the cup when she talked about the safe. The way her eyes dropped when she said she wasn't supposed to talk to customers anymore. They hadn't just frozen her out. They'd convinced her it was for her own good. I took a deep breath and looked around the room. Same cracked tile, same crooked light fixture. But the air felt different now, like the place was waiting on something. I made a quiet promise right then, right there, one I didn't say out loud. I'm not walking away this time, not again, not while she's still here. After breakfast, Edie dozed off in the recliner again, so I threw on my coat and stepped out the side door. The cold punched me square in the face. The wind had picked up overnight, and the gravel in the lot was crusted with frost. I walked the perimeter like I used to when Mom ran inventory, checking the sheds, the alley by the dumpsters, and that small greenhouse out back where Edie used to keep herbs and succulents. The greenhouse was a mess, broken trays, dead plants, one busted grow lamp dangling by its cord. Then I heard movement by the loading dock. Kyle stood by his truck stacking cases of detergent and canned goods. His breath clouded in the air, and he didn't even flinch when he saw me coming. "You're up early," he said, slamming the tailgate. "Didn't realize the store was doing deliveries Christmas morning? Didn't realize you still cared what this place did." He tossed another box into the bed. I walked up close. "You locked her in a storage room, Kyle. You gonna tell me that was part of the holiday event too?" He turned to face me, arms crossed, chin up like he was proud of himself. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." She needed rest. She wanders, Rachel. You don't know what it's been like. I know what I saw. And I know she had bruises on her arms. He smirked. She bruises easy. You'd know that if you'd been around. I didn't blink. You're not gonna guilt me into silence. Try again. He shrugged. Look, this isn't your world anymore. You left. You made your choice. Yeah, and now I'm back. And I'm not walking past what you and Denise have been pulling. He tilted his head. Pulling? That's cute. You really think you know what's going on here? I know enough. He stepped closer, voice lower. You don't know the half of it. Then enlighten me. He stared at me a long second, then smirked again, shook his head, and climbed into the truck. Go ahead, he said through the window. Dig around. Let's see how far you get. Then he peeled out of the lot, gravel kicking up like buckshot. I didn't waste time. I headed straight back inside and locked the front door behind me. Edie was still asleep, soft breathing, blanket tucked under her chin. I walked to the back office, same one they'd locked her in, and flicked on the overhead light. Dust still hung in the air from where I'd split the door frame with the crowbar. I opened the filing cabinet by the desk. Top drawer, nothing but coupons and church flyers. Second drawer had invoices, some with Kyle's sloppy signature. I flipped through the stacks. The totals didn't add up. December's income reports were missing. October's had no receipt log. And there were charges from someplace in Des Moines. Bulk goods ordered but never stocked here. Then I found a handwritten ledger tucked behind an old training manual. Denise's handwriting, neat, color-coded. 2 different expense columns, both labeled store inventory. One had crossed out entries, one didn't. My stomach twisted. They weren't just freezing her out. They were bleeding the place dry while smiling in the front window. I sat down, pulled the ledger closer, and started matching entries to the receipts I could find. My fingers were numb, but I didn't stop. Kyle was right about one thing. I didn't know the half of it, but I was about to. I was still knee-deep in receipts when the front door slammed open. The bell above it clanged so hard it hit the frame. Denise, red coat, wild eyes, no makeup, just fury and whatever coffee she'd chugged on the way over. You just couldn't leave it alone, could you? She snapped, stomping across the floor like she still owned the place. What the hell did you say to her? I stood up slow, keeping the folder in my hand. What did I say? You mean the truth? You're turning her against us. Her voice cracked. People are talking. Customers are asking questions they shouldn't be asking. You don't like questions, huh? That's convenient. I walked out from behind the counter. Funny how they only started once Edie was seen again. Denise scoffed and threw her arms up. This is her home. We've kept it going, kept her safe. Safe? You hid her in a locked room while you cooked the books out front. Edie stirred in the recliner. She was bundled up, quiet, but her eyes were wide open now, locked right on Denise. You don't understand what it's been like, Denise hissed. She was forgetting names, slipping up. We were trying to protect her. You didn't protect her. I stepped in close, voice low. You hid her away so no one would see what you'd become. That hit. I saw it. The second her mouth tightened and her chin quivered, she pushed past it fast. You left, she snapped. You left her. You left me. Don't you dare walk back in here like some kind of hero. I didn't blink. I'm not here to be a hero. I'm here because I saw my aunt freezing on the floor of a locked office while you passed out cider and smiled for the mayor. Denise's face flushed deep red. We did everything. Every holiday event, every order, every town meeting. You weren't here for any of it. And none of that makes up for what you did to her. Silence hit hard. Just the hum of the heater, finally fixed, and the sound of Edie's blanket rustling as she sat up straighter. She looked at Denise, eyes glassy but sharp. Her voice came quiet, but it landed like a hammer. Rachel didn't leave me. You did. Right in front of my face, Denise's mouth opened, then shut. She blinked fast, like the words had knocked something loose. Fine, she said through clenched teeth. You want to burn this all down? Go ahead. She spun on her heel, stomped to the door, and yanked it so hard the bell above it rattled again. The glass shook as it slammed shut behind her. I exhaled, slow and steady, like I'd been holding my breath since she walked in. Edie leaned back, pulling the blanket over her legs. Her face was calm again, but not soft. I picked the folder back up. You okay? She nodded once. You? Getting there. I walked over to the register, slid the folder underneath, and turned back toward the windows. Snow had started falling again, light this time, like it wasn't sure it wanted to stick. But I'd already made up my mind. I was staying. 2 days later, we walked into Beck and Associates on Main Street, just past the barber shop across from the diner. The snow was mostly slush by then, boots squeaking on the wet floor as I helped Edie into the small waiting room. The office was warm, tidy, smelled like lemon wood polish. Aunt Edie gripped my arm tighter than usual, but her chin was up. A door opened, and a tall woman with short dark hair and a navy pantsuit stepped out. Edith, I'm Caroline Beck. We spoke on the phone. She had a firm handshake and sharp eyes. Mid-40s, no-nonsense type, but not cold. She gave me a quick once-over and nodded. You must be Rachel. That's me. She led us into a small conference room where Denise, Kyle, and Uncle Len were already seated. No one stood to greet us. Denise was tapping her phone like she had somewhere better to be. Kyle leaned back, arms crossed, fake calm, and ready to explode. Caroline closed the door. We'll keep this brief. She sat, opened the folder in front of her, and got straight to it. This meeting is to confirm the updated legal documents concerning Edith Dunley's business interests and property holdings. These include the Cedar Bend General Store, the attached residence, and the surrounding lot. Kyle raised an eyebrow. Why are we here for that? Caroline didn't blink. Because Mrs. Dunley has amended her transition documents. As of 3 months ago, full legal ownership of the business, the property, and its assets are being transferred to Rachel Dunley. Silence hit the room like a dropped wrench. Denise blinked. What? Edie didn't flinch. She reached into her purse, pulled out her glasses, and looked at Caroline. Show them the notarized copy. Caroline slid the forms across the table. Kyle stood. This is a joke. Rachel's been back 5 minutes. I kept quiet. I just watched them both unravel. Denise leaned in, face twisted. She pressured you, didn't she? She's manipulating you? This isn't real. It can't be. Edie didn't yell. Didn't blink. Just said, I did this before Rachel ever showed up again. That shut Denise up for a beat. I knew what was happening, Edie said. I knew what you two were doing. I wasn't sure how to stop it, but I knew who I trusted. You're not thinking clearly, Kyle snapped. She's confused. We're contesting this. You can try, Caroline said, smooth and steady. But the documents were signed while Edith was of sound mind, with 2 witnesses and a medical confirmation of capacity. Dated, stamped, and filed. You're welcome to get your own counsel. Denise turned on me. You don't deserve it. You think you're swooping in to save the day? I didn't swoop, I said flat. I showed up. There's a difference. Uncle Len shifted in his seat for the first time, but still didn't speak. Edie sat taller. I wanted this. Because she's the only one who never tried to erase me. Kyle slammed his chair back and stormed out. Denise followed, muttering curses under her breath. Uncle Len stood slowly, looked at Edie, then at me. No words. Just the same tired, bitter stare he always gave me after Mom died. Then he walked out, letting the door creak behind him. Caroline gathered the paperwork and handed me a copy. It's official. You're the legal owner now. I looked over at Edie. She was still watching the door, like waiting for something else to come crashing through. You sure you're okay? I asked her. She looked at me, gave a small nod. I've never been more sure of anything. I helped her to her feet. We left the office slow, 1 step at a time, both of us quiet. But something felt clean for the first time in years. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and old paper. Edie sat beside me in the front row, her hands folded neat in her lap, dressed in the nicest sweater we could find that still fit. Caroline Beck sat on my other side, sharp as ever, flipping through her folders like this was just another Tuesday. But it wasn't just Tuesday. It was the hearing. The one Denise and Kyle dragged us into the second they realized they couldn't control her anymore. The courtroom was packed. Cedar Bend's entire peanut gallery had shown up, some leaning in like it was Sunday gossip, others with arms crossed, already choosing sides. Denise and Kyle sat 2 rows behind us, flanked by their lawyer, a slick guy from Des Moines with a too-tight tie and a greasy smile. Len sat next to them, silent, staring at the floor like the dust might answer for him. "All rise," the bailiff called, and the judge came in. Gray hair, tired eyes, small-town authority dripping off him like steam. We all sat. The judge didn't waste time. "Let's get to it. This is a petition filed by Kyle and Denise Dunley, seeking to challenge the legal transfer of property from Edith Dunley to Rachel Dunley, citing mental incapacity at the time of signing. Their lawyer stood, adjusted his cuffs, and launched into it. Your Honor, this case is about protection. Edith Dunley is a beloved member of this town, but over the past year, there have been concerning signs: memory loss, confusion, emotional swings. My client stepped in to help, and now suddenly, after years away, their cousin Rachel returns and walks out with the deed. He looked right at the judge. We believe Mrs. Dunley was mentally compromised, and that the transfer was coerced during a vulnerable state. I didn't look back. I stood when the judge nodded toward me. Tell the court what happened, he said. I kept it simple, clear, no shaking voice. Your Honor, when I arrived at the store on Christmas Eve, Aunt Edie was locked in the back office, door bolted from the outside. No heat, wrapped in a blanket, sitting on the floor. She had bruises on her arms and hadn't been seen by customers in weeks. A few gasps echoed behind me. I ignored them. I was told she was just resting, but she hadn't touched the books in months. Denise and Kyle had taken full control, told her she was confused, and shut her out. I paused. She wasn't confused. She was being erased. Caroline stood next, calm and prepared. She slid documents onto the table, one after the other like clockwork. Your Honor, we've submitted letters from Dr. Lindholm and Dr. Keating, Edith Dunley's primary physician and neurologist, confirming she was of sound mind at the time of signing. This transition was planned. Long before Rachel returned, she turned slightly, motioning toward Edie. And she'd like to speak for herself, the judge nodded. Mrs. Dunley, can you stand? I helped her up slow. She faced the court like she had nothing left to fear. I forget things, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Names, days, where I put my keys, but I don't forget love, and I don't forget kindness. Rachel never stopped writing to me, every year, every birthday, every hard week. She never tried to take my name off anything. She never told me I was less. She turned, just slightly, toward Denise and Kyle. They wanted the store. She wanted me. She sat back down. That was all she needed to say. Caroline stepped forward again. We've also submitted physical letters and notes from Rachel to Edie, dated, postmarked, consistent year after year, evidence of long-term contact and emotional support. The judge leaned back in his chair, hands folded over his chest, looked at me, then at Edie, then toward Denise and Kyle. The law doesn't measure family by blood alone, he said. It measures intent, capacity, evidence. Based on the documentation, the testimony, and the clear preparation made by Mrs. Dunley, this court denies the petition. The property transfer stands. The courtroom cracked into murmurs. Denise shot up from her seat, red-faced. This is ridiculous. You're choosing her over us? The judge didn't flinch. I'm following the law. You're dismissed. Kyle stayed seated a beat longer, then finally stood and followed his sister out the side door. Uncle Len never moved, never looked up. Just sat there like a man who knew he'd bet on the wrong hand and didn't have the guts to say so. Caroline leaned over and whispered, That's done. I looked at Edie. Her eyes were closed, but she was smiling. Yeah, that was done. The sun was brutal, bouncing off the pavement like it had something to prove. I pushed Edie's chair down Main Street, weaving through lawn chairs and red, white, and blue streamers taped to folding tables. Cedar Bend's 4th of July parade was the only time the whole town came together, without pretending they didn't have beef with each other. The store was closed for the day, but the front windows were decked out. Flags, paper stars, an old photo of Edie with my mom from back when they ran the place together. Someone had taped a hand-drawn sign to the glass. Thank you, Miss Edie. We found a spot near the corner, close to the judge's tent. I eased her chair into the shade. She wore her favorite sun hat, the straw one with the faded blue ribbon. Her hands rested in her lap, folded like always. A high school marching band passed by, drums thumping out of sync, some kid trying to twirl a baton and nearly smacking himself in the head. Edie laughed under her breath. Then the mayor stepped up to the mic, skinny guy in khakis and a tucked-in flag shirt, looking nervous like always. Before we wrap up today's parade, he said, I want to take a moment to recognize someone who's been the heart of this town longer than most of us have had birthdays. Folks around us perked up. Some clapped already. Miss Edith Dunley, he said, turning toward us. For decades, she kept the doors of the general store open, helping folks through winters, hard years, and every small thing in between. She gave credit when no one else would. She helped kids find work, bought school supplies out of her own pocket, and somehow remembered everyone's favorite candy bar. People started standing, a quiet wave of motion, like a wind moving through corn. She's part of this town's backbone, the mayor said, voice shaking a little, and we're damn lucky to have her. A group near the front, older men, veterans mostly, stood tall and gave a silent salute. No words, just still hands over hearts or straight to their brows. I looked up and across the street. Uncle Len was there, alone, standing just behind the hardware store's shade awning, hands shoved deep in his pockets. He didn't clap, didn't move, just watched. Edie reached up with one hand, slow but steady, and rested it right over my chest, over the little name badge I'd started wearing behind the counter again. Stand with them, she said, her voice low but firm. So I did. I stood up straight and raised my hand next to the veterans. She kept her eyes on the crowd, but I glanced back once. Len was still there. For a second, I thought he might lift his hand, maybe nod, say something. He didn't. He dropped his eyes to the pavement, turned around, and walked away. Didn't look back. I let him go. I pushed Edie's chair back through the store entrance just before dusk. The place looked like a half-finished dream. New paint along the walls, fresh signs, tables moved to make space for crates of school supplies, coats, canned food. The old Cedar Bend General sign still hung above the front window, but right underneath it was the new one, hand-painted by two local teens, Edith Dunley Center. She smiled when she saw it again. Same smile she used to give me when I got math right as a kid. Small, proud, private. Inside, people kept stopping by. Mrs. Trammell dropped off a sewing machine. Tommy Baldwin brought 3 boxes of tools from his shed, said they were collecting dust anyway. A group of high school girls came in with brushes and rollers, arguing over which shade of yellow would look best in the corner nook. Edie watched it all from her rocking chair behind the counter, same spot she'd claimed since I was little. Except now she didn't look tired. She looked rooted. I knelt beside her and handed her a cold lemonade. I've got something else, I said. It's not official yet, but I'm setting up a scholarship. For girls going into trades, mechanics, electricians, carpentry, your name's going to be on every check. She looked at me like she was seeing the kid version of me again. I always knew you'd bring the lights back on, she said. I didn't say anything, just held her hand and watched the teens paint the last stripe across the wall. By the time the last volunteer cleared out, it was dark outside. I locked the door, flipped the sign to closed for good reasons, and turned off the front lights. Then I stepped outside and looked up. The fireworks had started. Loud cracks, bursts of color lighting up the whole sky over Cedar Bend. Reds, blues, golds, all falling slow like sparks off a bonfire. I stood there on the steps of the store, key still in my hand, thought about how much had changed without ever really changing. Thought about how people will twist things, hide behind politeness, and call it love. But justice isn't loud. It doesn't storm into a room and demand the floor. It shows up, stays put, says, I'm not moving. That's what I'd done. And this time, I was staying.